Well, apparently I need to put this in here. I do not give consent for my posts to be read/interpreted/posted to any monetized or ad-supported platform. Examples include YouTube or other platforms. Short version. If you make money off reading someone else's posts, I do not give consent for you to make money off of my posts. Crosh posted from r/fuck HOA. I should clarify that this story happened between the spring of 2010 and summer of 2012. After years of hearing stories of problems with HOAs and having no tolerance for busybodies ourselves, my wife and I were both solidly in agreement that we would never purchase a home in an HOA. When we finally did find a house and purchased it, we knew for a fact that we were not in an HOA. However, just behind us, we learned there was a not really HOA. About a week after we moved in, there was a knock on the door. One of the neighbors behind us, announcing that she was president of the HOA and welcoming us to the neighborhood. Seems civil enough, but we asked, "What HOA?" "Oh, we're behind you. The home behind yours is where the HOA starts." "Okay, that's nice to meet you." Just general pleasantries. We were hopeful. We were shocked, even. Someone associated with the management of an HOA that wasn't a complete busybody psychopath. How wrong we were. The way our lot was, there was a sliver of green space between our property line and the sidewalk. In a somewhat triangular shape, the street ran west-southwest. Our property line ran due east-west. So there was a wedge of land there. We'd always been told that this belonged to the HOA, yada yada, no big deal, just meant we didn't have to deal with the upkeep of this land. Now that this setup is all in place, it's time to start the story of how we got the not really an HOA dissolved. We had a couple of trees in our yard, literally on the property line, so we took responsibility for taking care of these things. They're massive. They're also a pain in the butt, incredibly dense/heavy, and because of the way the limbs grow, they're prone to splitting and dropping limbs. There was a huge limb that extended way out into the street adjacent to the green space owned by the HOA. This thing was a major risk of dropping and severely injuring/killing someone. We didn't want that on our conscience or our insurance. And so we decided to take that limb down entirely, as well as clean out a lot of the deadwood in the two trees. Hired an arborist, they came out, did their thing. $1,400 later, we were left with some decent-sized rounds that we were going to move over the next weekend. I was out of town the first weekend after we removed the limb. I should note that the wood was neatly stacked in the green space on the bark dust, out of everyone's way, and in no way a hazard or eyesore. Enter the shrieking president of the HOA. My wife had stepped out the door the day I had left on my trip, and she pulls up into our driveway, rolls down the window, and starts yelling at my wife, "You need to move that wood now. That's private property of the HOA. Move it now." My wife is not a confrontational type. She's also somewhat petite, and tried to explain to the harpy that I was out of town and that we would be moving it as soon as I got back in town the next weekend. Nope, not good enough. She shrieks at my wife some more, and my wife ends up grabbing the wheelbarrow and somehow moves the stack of rounds. Some of them weighed close to 100 pounds, around the fence, up our driveway, and into the backyard. She was pissed. So was I. We knew where the harpy lived. So when I got back, I went over to talk to her and explained that I was rather displeased in how she treated my wife. Didn't pound on the door, wasn't aggressive or anything. They wouldn't answer the door. Cowards. We knew they were home. This left us with a bit of a displeased taste in our mouth. The next spring, the hedge that is planted outside of our fence line, well, it wasn't maintained very well and pushed over 2 sections of our wooden fence. So I emailed the harpy and explained that their hedge had damaged our fence. "It's not our hedge. It's growing in your green space." "That's not our green space." "Wait, what? Then why they censored? Did you decide to screech at my wife last summer when we had the wood stacked there?" Silence. Well, at that point I fixed the fence so our dog wouldn't escape, after pruning the laurel back sufficiently that it wouldn't damage the fence again, and started making some phone calls. I contacted the county and ended up speaking to about 7 different departments in order to figure out who actually owned that strip of land. After probably 2 weeks of trying to find the right people to talk to, I got to the roads division. The green space was marked as part of the right-of-way for the road, and therefore no one actually owned that space. So I can chop down that ugly, overgrown hedge that's encroaching on the sidewalk and knocking down my fence? Yep, says the kind gentleman from the roads division. As an aside, he asked, you mentioned something about there being an HOA associated with the plots to the east of your property? Yeah. Well, part of what took me so long to get an answer for you is that it turns out there is no HOA registered with the county there. So we were looking in the wrong place entirely. Wait, there's no HOA there? No, hasn't ever been one since that subdivision was built. Ha! Interesting. And a plot was hatched. We had befriended a couple of people within the neighborhood behind us, and they were rather fed up with Ms. President of the HOA and her antics. She was the typical busybody, bullying anyone she didn't like, and apparently for the last 10 years or so had been collecting HOA dues from everyone in the neighborhood to the tune of $300 per year. There were 36 homes in the HOA, right around $100,000 in dues, for a non-existent HOA, with no real maintenance. Oh, they hosted an annual block party potluck style. They pulled weeds from the green space on a volunteer basis. So I did what any red-blooded American would do. I got 36 envelopes, 36 stamps, and printed off 36 copies of a letter with my findings from the county that there was not now, nor ever had been for the recorded history of the subdivision, any HOA, neighborhood association, or any similar organization, and that they, collectively, had paid in excess of $100,000 in dues over that time to a non-existent entity, plus any fines the non-existent HOA had decided to levy. The neighbors, in turn, did exactly what any red-blooded American would do. They sued the hell out of her for every penny they'd paid over the last 10 years. 1, 2. And there's no longer an HOA behind us. Edit. Forgot to mention this. In all the digging into this mess, we learned she's a real estate agent. I figure I'll wait until she pisses me off again and report this whole mess to the state's real estate licensing board. Evil grin. Edit to the edit. As others have pointed out, this needs to be reported to the licensing board. We'll look into that process. Edit of the edit to the edit. I have sent an initial email to my state's real estate licensing board, real estate agency, and will post any updates as things develop. I did look her up in the licensing system. Apparently she's licensed as a principal broker for her agency. This should get interesting. Edit the fourth. And this should be particularly interesting. Her license is up for renewal at the end of this month. This should put one hell of a speed bump in that process. Evil grin. Regarding the criminal charges, since I wasn't a victim of the fraud, that's not something I can pursue. However, I spoke with my friend who was one of her victims, and he and his wife are talking to other people they trust about coming together and seeking criminal charges. If anything comes of that, I will post an update. Edit the fifth. Yes, just for you/SaladCube007. Laughing face, we just got back from dinner with our friends. And boy, oh boy, did I learn a lot about what all happened. I was going to try to write it out here as an edit, but it's almost as long as the original story. A lot of details I didn't know, and even more revenge can be found here. I got a not really and HOA disbanded part 2/. Please leave your story in the comments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to get new update. Thank you.